Okay, so, before I even get into what's coming through here, I want to just sit with the energy for a moment because there's something that landed the second I started tuning in for this collective, and it's almost like, I don't even know how to say this without it sounding dramatic, but it's like someone tried to write you out of the story, and the universe just refused to let that happen. Take a breath with me for a second. If you're here, you're meant to receive this. I'm picking up on something that feels like a long exhale. Like you have been carrying something for so long that you almost forgot what it felt like to not carry it. And I think part of what's been happening, what you've been navigating, is this quiet, ongoing experience of being underestimated. Not necessarily in a loud, dramatic way. Sometimes it's subtle. Sometimes it's the person who doesn't text back with the same urgency they used to. Sometimes it's the situation that stopped meeting you halfway. Sometimes it's you yourself, honestly, looking in the mirror and wondering if you read things wrong, if you asked for too much, if you somehow made yourself too available and that became the problem. I want to speak directly to that because the energy here is clear. You did not make yourself the problem. You made yourself present. Those are completely different things. Something about this collective feels like a group of people who have been doing the internal work, sometimes without even realizing that's what it was. You've been sitting with things that didn't resolve cleanly. You've been in situations, whether that's a relationship, a connection, a job, a version of yourself, where things went quiet before they went loud, and that quiet was its own kind of painful. Because silence has a way of making the mind fill in every worst-case scenario, doesn't it? And I think many of you know exactly what I mean. You weren't overthinking because you're dramatic. You were overthinking because something felt unfinished, and you're someone who needs things to make sense before you can release them. Here's what I'm getting though. The thing that didn't make sense, it's starting to. Not necessarily because someone finally gave you an explanation. More like, the picture is becoming clear from the inside. Your own understanding is arriving. And that's actually more powerful than someone handing you closure, because when you reach it yourself, no one can take it from you. I'm noticing something interesting as I sit with this energy. There's a tension between two different things happening simultaneously. On one side, there's genuine exhaustion. Real, bone-deep emotional tiredness. The kind that builds up when you've been pouring yourself into something or someone, and the return has been inconsistent, or draining, or just, not enough. Some of you have been giving energy to a connection that has been pulling from you more than it has been filling you. And for a long time, you normalized that. You told yourself this is just how love is, or this is just how things are, or I'm being too sensitive. You minimized your own depletion to keep the peace or keep the connection alive. But on the other side of that exhaustion, and this is what's shifting, there's a kind of clarity that can only come from being completely emptied out. When you have nothing left to perform, nothing left to manage, nothing left to sacrifice in hopes that it turns things around, what's left is just you. And apparently, you are something quite significant. Because the energy I'm picking up is not the energy of someone fading. It's the energy of someone being revealed. This reading is for a collective, so not everything will apply to everyone. Take what resonates and leave what doesn't. But if this is landing for you, stay with it. There's someone in this energy, and I want to be careful how I describe this because it's layered. There's a person or a situation that thought they had you figured out. And I don't mean that in a conspiratorial way, like they were plotting against you. It's more unconscious than that. They put you in a category. They made an assumption about your limits, your resilience, your capacity to walk away, your willingness to keep showing up regardless of how things were going. They thought they knew how this was going to go. And somewhere along the way, something shifted, and now they're recalibrating. I'm hearing something like, and this is more of an impression than a literal thing, it's like someone looking around and thinking, wait, where did they go? Not physically, but energetically. Like your presence has changed. Like you stopped performing a version of yourself that was built around managing their comfort or earning their acknowledgement. And that change in you, quiet as it may feel from your side, is registering in ways you might not fully see yet. Because here's the thing about people who have been holding back or pulling away or keeping you at arm's length, they do a very particular thing when they realize the dynamic has changed. They don't immediately become honest or vulnerable. First, they become aware. And awareness before action can look like a lot of things. It can look like someone who suddenly shows up a little differently. It can look like a subtle shift in their tone. It can look like them reaching out in ways that feel slightly unexpected. Not necessarily a grand gesture, sometimes it's a smaller thing that wouldn't have meant anything before but feels different now because you've changed. And I think part of what this reading is really about is asking you, can you trust your own perception of that shift? Because I'm picking up some self-doubt in this collective. Not the kind that's paralyzing, but the quiet kind that asks, am I imagining this? Did something actually change or am I just hoping it did? And I want to speak to that directly. Your perception is not the problem. What's been making you question your perception is a pattern of having your reality minimized either by someone else or by your own learned habit of second-guessing yourself to keep the peace. You're not imagining the shift. But here's what I want you to consider, whether or not someone else is changing, you are. And that matters more than you might realize right now. There's something happening here that feels like a turning point, not in a dramatic, everything changes overnight way, but in that slower, more permanent way. Like a gear finally catching. Like a decision that's been forming underground finally breaking through to the surface. And this isn't just about the external situation. This is about you arriving somewhere internally that you've been trying to get to for a while. A place where you stop negotiating with yourself about your own worth. A place where you stop running the mental math of whether you gave enough, whether you were too much, whether you got it wrong. Some of you have been operating from a framework that says, if I just do this slightly differently, if I communicate more clearly, if I give it a little more time, things will balance out. And sometimes that framework is wisdom. But sometimes it's a way of keeping yourself in motion so you don't have to sit with the reality that what you've been waiting for may have already revealed itself. Not in the form you hoped for, but in the pattern. Patterns are honest even when people aren't. I'm not saying abandon hope. I'm not saying the situation is over or that things can't shift. But I am feeling strongly that the version of you who needed external confirmation to feel like you were on the right track is dissolving. And what's replacing it is something quieter and more certain. An internal knowing that doesn't need to be validated by anyone outside of you. That's not arrogance. That's not coldness. That's actually one of the healthiest things a person can develop, a stable sense of their own reality that exists independently of whether someone else agrees with it. This is interesting because as I sit here, the energy keeps pulling me towards something that feels like unexpressed value. Like there's something about you, some quality or presence or capacity, that has been doing a tremendous amount of invisible work in this situation. You have probably been the stabilizing force. You've probably been the one who held things together in moments when the other person or the situation was unpredictable. You were the one who showed up consistently, who didn't make things more complicated than they needed to be, who absorbed more than your fair share of the emotional weight. And that role, that invisible, uncelebrated role, has a cost. The cost is that sometimes when you're the one who's always stable, always present, always managing, people forget to ask if you're okay. They forget to check if the foundation they've been standing on is holding up. They take for granted that you'll be there, not because they don't care, but because your reliability made it easy not to think too carefully about it. Until you're not there in the same way. Until something changes. And something has changed, hasn't it? Not necessarily something you announced. Maybe it's just that you stopped overextending yourself in the small ways that add up. Maybe you started responding differently. Maybe you're just more tired than usual, and that tiredness is making you less available in ways you don't even fully control. Whatever it is, the ground has shifted, and the people or situations that relied on you not noticing your own value are starting to notice it for you. At first this felt like one thing as I was reading it, but now it's becoming something more specific. I think for some of you, there's a relationship, romantic or otherwise, where you have been questioning whether you matter. Whether your absence would even register. Whether the connection is as mutual as you need it to be. And I feel like the answer that's coming through is not a comfortable one, but it's an honest one. You matter more than has been shown. The gap between how much you matter and how much that's been communicated is where all the pain has been living. And the reason that gap exists is complicated. It's partly fear on the other side. It's partly ego. It's partly someone who has feelings they don't fully know how to hold. It's partly the way some people confuse consistency for guarantee. They know you're there, so they don't have to work to keep you there. But now there's a crack in that certainty, and cracks let light in on both sides. I want to be real with you for a moment because I think this collective can handle it. The changes happening right now are not all comfortable. Some of what's shifting is the loss of an illusion you may have been holding on to. The illusion that if you were just patient enough, available enough, clear enough, the thing you wanted would naturally come together. Some of you are releasing that illusion. And grief is appropriate. You're not being dramatic if you grieve the version of this you hoped for. That hope was real. It deserved better. And letting it go doesn't mean you failed. It means you're finally letting reality be what it actually is instead of what you needed it to be. But there's something in this energy that feels genuinely new. Not recycled hope dressed up in different words, but something that feels more grounded. More solid. Like the kind of peace that comes after a long internal storm finally passes. You're moving towards something, not necessarily a specific person or outcome, but a version of your life where you are not spending your energy convincing people of your worth. Where you don't have to shrink to be chosen. Where the right things recognize you without you having to perform for them. That's not a small thing. That's everything, actually. I'm also getting that someone in this collective has been a witness to their own life in a really profound way lately. Like you've been watching yourself go through this, watching yourself feel things, watching yourself make choices, and there's a part of you that's been quietly taking note. Something like, I see how I react when I feel unseen. I see what I reach for when I'm hurting. I see the patterns I keep walking into. And that witnessing, even when it's painful, is the beginning of something changing at a root level, not just a surface level. That's not small work. That's the kind of work that quietly rewrites everything. Something about this energy keeps coming back to the idea of being irreplaceable. Not in an arrogant way, just in the truthful way. That there is something about you, some specific way you love or show up or understand things, that cannot be replicated by someone else. And the situation you're in, or moving through, has brought that truth to the surface in unexpected ways. People don't always know what they have until the dynamic shifts. Until the energy changes. Until the person they took for granted starts reflecting a different version of themselves back at them, not out of manipulation, but out of genuine growth. And if someone is waking up to that right now, in your world, and I think some of you know exactly what I'm talking about, what happens next depends not just on them but on you. On what you decide you're available for. On what you're willing to rebuild and what you're willing to leave as it is. On whether this shift is about you two finding a new ground together, or about you finally finding a new ground within yourself and simply allowing what's meant to follow. Take what's yours from this and leave the rest. Whatever you're walking through right now, and I know it hasn't been easy, I really do feel that in this collective, there's a real weariness here. I want you to know that the part of you that kept going, even when it felt like no one was watching, even when the return on your investment felt invisible, that part of you was not foolish. It was faithful. There's a difference. And what it was faithful to isn't lost. It's just taking a shape you maybe didn't expect. Trust yourself more than you've been trusting yourself. Your sense of things is more accurate than the doubt tells you. Your timing, your instincts, your quiet knowing, those are worth listening to. And the rest of it, the things that are still unclear, the outcomes that haven't landed yet, they're still moving. You don't have to force them. You just have to keep showing up as the most honest version of yourself, and things have a way of finding their right place. You're going to be okay. Not in the empty way people sometimes say that, I mean it in the specific way. The version of you that comes out on the other side of this is someone who knows their own ground. That's a rare thing to have. Don't underestimate how much that matters.